Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at gcnlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Welcome to USA Prepares. This is your captain speaking, John Regan. I'm sitting in for Vincent today. I got a call last night, and Vincent just had one of those things he had to do during the day, and I asked if I could do him a favor and sit in for him. So here I am, and he'll be back with you tomorrow. And just so you know, I'll be on with Vincent this coming Monday, even though it's Labor Day. There's a lot of economic information to go through, as well as what's happening in Texas and Louisiana. So that ought to be quite interesting. We're going to talk about a lot of the ramifications. It's Wednesday, so it's time for Dr. Norm Shealy, and if you have a question for him, the call-in number is 1-866-582-9933. That's 1-866-582-9933. Good morning, Dr. Shealy.
Good morning, John. Always great to catch up with you. How's Dallas? Is it okay in all this flooding?
Yeah, Dallas is fine. In fact, we've had very little rain from the storm. It's only been about as far north as Waco. There's been an occasional outer band come through, but that's nothing really any different than a little bit of rain. Sometimes you might get maybe an inch or two in an hour, but it doesn't stick around, so we don't have the effects like they do along the coast.
I just got a note from someone that the largest refinery in the country just shut down.
And that's probably the one in Port Arthur. They're being hit hard. My hometown's Beaumont, which is like 20 miles away from there, and that whole area is now being hit the way Houston was earlier in the week.
Wow. So, John, as always, I've been waiting for the crash to come for several years now. Not whether, but when. Any ideas?
I do, but we have a caller, Tina in Missouri. Let's take care of her, and then we can talk about it.
Of course.
Good morning, Tina.
Good morning. Good morning. Hi, Dr. Shealy.
Howdy. What's up?
I just have a quick question. My son, he's 31, and periodically he would get like an excruciating migraine. And now they're coming more often, and the research that he did tells him that he has a hemiplegic migraine. And I was wondering if you have ever heard of that, and if you have any, any suggestions of what he can do for self-help.
Well, there are numerous variations in migraine. Which affects roughly 9% of men and over twice that in women. And there are numerous things. Of course, always at the top of the list is to be as careful as one can about any food sensitivities, smoking, and stuff like that.
He doesn't smoke.
Good.
Go ahead.
The number one treatment of choice is temperature biofeedback. Learning to control the temperature in the hand. That is, it can be learned easily, and it works over 88% of the time. If that is not it, then there are several electrical stimulators that work. The one I like most is the Fisher-Wallace. And, of course, for 80% of people, 75% of people, fire bliss or air bliss will bring them under control. So there are a number of options, but obviously each person is individual.
Sure. Can you tell me what brings that on? It just all of a sudden, that type of migraine. I mean, it's so bad that it's debilitating, and he has to be like in a dark room and quiet, and it just came on.
Well, it's that way. It can come on at any age from before age 10 even occasionally until the 70s it can start, and it's something triggered enough stress to cause it to start in that particular individual at that particular time.
I was just going to say, so does stress come into play with that, or?
Oh, yes. Everything is aggravated by stress.
Gotcha.
Whether it's high blood pressure, depression, anxiety, cancer. Stress is the number one precipitating factor in every disease.
Okay. So basically, you would recommend him starting with the fire bliss and air bliss.
Well, that's the simplest thing that he can do on his own.
Uh-huh.
And I read many people, he should do it every day.
Mm-hmm.
And at the very onset of a headache, take it out, sniff it, and put it on quickly. If that doesn't work, where is he, by the way?
Where is he?
Well,
he's at work right now.
No, but where does he live?
Oh, he lives in Missouri. Yeah, we live in state at Missouri, so we would be a couple hours from Springfield.
Right, I understand. Well, look, have him try that, and if that doesn't work, we'd be happy to see it.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Thanks for calling.
Well, you and I both have been looking at what's going on, and we have to go ahead and look at a little bit of history. By all rights, the United States should have gone bankrupt in 1971.
Great. I mean, it's one of the things I enjoy about having you on this. You're one of the few people I know who understands this and feels that way as I do.
Nixon had no choice but to take us off the gold standard, because had he not, we would have run out of gold. That would have been it, and we would have had the crisis back then. So what's been happening since 1971, since they've been using funny money all across the world now, they've been able to go to extreme levels of debt. We are now talking more than $300 trillion of debt worldwide, and that doesn't count the unfunded liabilities, which would take more than $200 trillion right now with the proper interest rate just to cover the promises they've made. 2008, again, that should have pretty much been it, except they did all this quantitative easing, tens of trillions of dollars made up out of thin air. And that has kept the markets where everybody thinks everything's great because all they look at is the market indexes and yeah, it's record highs, so the economy must be doing good. And and it's going to come back and bite them before too much longer.
Fluff is still fluff. And insanity is still insanity, et cetera, et cetera. So how much is not too long, John? You're willing to put stuff out on a twig and say, buy at the latest?
Well, there's many factors, and of course, timing is the most difficult thing to pin down. It's these types of events quite often start in September, October, so we may be seeing things this year. It's possible they may want to try and push it after the first of the year so they can take advantage of making money during Christmas one last time. But between what's actually going on that's not reported on, in the mainstream, And then you have to add...
Reality is not, anything reality is not reported in the mainstream. I'm sorry.
But the government loves us, and they care about us.
Oh, yeah. And the boogeyman is coming in the door right now.
So there's a bunch of indicators that I've covered that say that we have they've not seen this indicator except during a recession, or we're within weeks to months to being in a recession, depending on which indicator you look at. The one that we used officially was GDP. If that was negative 2 quarters in a row, that marked the start of recession. And what people are forgetting now is about 2 years ago, the Obama administration changed the way that GDP was calculated. They put in a double seasonal adjustment, which is something I never learned in any of my statistics classes.
I know.
And I read one analyst saying, if you want to know what GDP really is, then subtract about 3% from that. And if you do that, then we've had negative GDP for some time. What the official is, and in a way, it's kind of like Harvey. It doesn't just happen all at once. What we're going to be looking at is at some point there's an event, and Harvey could be the first domino in this.
I've been wondering about that.
Yeah, and that's one of the things we're going to be talking about Monday. There's just so many ramifications to all the damage that's happened, and we'll walk through that. But we've got an initial crash event of some type that will probably be on the order of 30 to 50%. And then it gets worse from there.
Yeah, I've been predicting 80% when the big one comes, if we're lucky.
And well, we've got the music now, so we'll cover a little bit more when we get back on the flip side. This is John Regan sitting in for Vincent today, Dr. Norman Shealy. We've been talking about the economy before the break. When is this crash going to happen? And one of the reasons they can't really put it off this time is because of we've pretty much maximized the amount of debt we can take, kind of like those rains in southeast Texas. You can only take so much before you can't ignore it any longer. You can imagine if a household, their debt service, the principal and interest payments they make, their taxes, if just those two items were more than what their income was, you would realize that household has a problem. Now, just because one household has a problem doesn't make it a problem for the country. But we're now reaching a point where government spending plus debt service on the, I think it's $67 trillion worth of debt now, both public and private. And that doesn't count the unfunded liabilities for the pension funds and Social Security and Medicare. Just those two items, debt service, government spending, is approaching total income for the country. That doesn't leave room for food, transportation. Housing is somewhat included in there because most everything's financed by debt. So you get to a point where there's just no more money to spend on things. And at that point, things kind of freeze up. And, it's not just, this guy that, at the height of his Air Force career as a captain working in the basement of the Pentagon. Jim Rogers, you may not recognize his name, but you'll certainly recognize his former business partner's name, George Soros. And they did a fantastic job when the economy wasn't doing all that well. But it was phenomenal just to read about what they did. It's believed that Jim Rogers is a billionaire. Soros is a double-digit billionaire. Rogers is more private, and it's confirmed he's worth at least $300 million. And he says the worst crash in our lifetime is coming. And he's, it's not just like 2008 where Lehman Brothers failed. That was around for over 150 years. We're going to see firms fail. We're also soon going to see governments fail. It's going to be nasty.
Interesting, because I was born in 1932, which was theoretically the height of the Depression. And my father was just a very simple meat cutter in a grocery store at the time. And I, of course, don't remember much before age 4 or 5. But we didn't suffer. And yet I know it was horrible for a lot of people. In general, considering that roughly 50% or more of the population are on government subsidies now, that was not true back in 1928 and forward. I would guess that a minimum of 75 to 80% of people are going to suffer one way or another. I mean, really suffer, not just, have tight times.
Definitely. We can use the Great Depression as a guide, but there's differences, and that makes the situation that much worse. And we were talking about asset declines. Steve St. Angelo, who does a great job at SRS Rocco Report, says that eventually asset prices will drop 50 to 75%. So you can imagine you have a house that, whether or not you have a mortgage or you have it paid off, and then all of a sudden, he's basically saying in the next 5 to 10 years, we could easily see a 75% or more reduction in real estate values. And at that point, your only choice if you want to get out of your house is to declare bankruptcy. And and those are the people that used to have assets. Well, got the break coming. We'll be back with Dr. Shealy in a few minutes. This is John Regan with Dr. Norm Shealy. We've been more on my turf this morning, talking about what's going on with the economy. And
let's put it, this is everybody's turf.
And it's not in great shape either.
No.
So I've said that the most common time frame that this happens in is the September, October, and there's reasons for that, because all these big funds have to do their end of year finagling during that time, and that helps lead to those types of problems. It could go on a little bit more. I really don't know how they can push it much beyond February, March, especially when you look at the political environment. Because, I don't think it's any big secret. The globalists hate Trump, whether they're Democrat or Republican, and they want to do whatever possible to make it difficult for him to put in any more changes. And one of the ways of doing that is to have some tough economic times, and at this point they blame it on Trump, even though it's all happened and been set up before him. And so by the November elections next year, perhaps the Democrats get one or both houses of Congress, and then you got stalemate until at least 2020.
John, this raises to me the question from the health and well-being point of view. And, of course, one of the reasons that it started this program in USA Prepares is the common sense of being prepared all of the time, and especially when it's unequivocally going to happen. And so, maybe we should cover a few things about that from my point of view, and obviously with any additional things you want to put on it. To me, every single person should have on hand a minimum of some kind of food for all the people in that home for a minimum of a year on hand. If you don't have that much, well, get the most you can, because the single greatest immediate need is going to be food. Then I would say have adequate soap. And when I talk about soap, I'm talking about soap, not detergent. And then, obviously, if you have a medical problem, you need to be prepared for whatever you might need, especially if you're on any kind of medications and all of that kind of thing. Speaking from a medical point of view, in my opinion, the medical system is as bad as the federal government. And part of the reason it's as bad as the federal government is when the federal government got involved in 1965. That's when things really went, south. I'm being kind. I wrote to Johnson in 63 telling him he's going to bankrupt the country. And part of it is that. I mean, medical costs in 1965, when Medicare came in, were 4.5% of gross national product. Now they're 20%. By 1970, within 5 years, they almost tripled up to 12%. And so government got involved in Medicare. Everybody thinks that's wonderful, but that tripled the cost of medical care, which isn't great to start with. And, of course, just this week, it finally came into the major medical news that it is carbohydrates that make you fat and ill and kill you with heart disease and cancer and diabetes. It's not meat, and it's not fat. Now, Rhoda Barnes published that stuff over 50 years ago. It's been known, but it's taken this long to get it at least admitted that they've been wrong. The American Heart Association, the AMA, et cetera, been wrong for at least 60 or 70 years about heart disease especially. And so you've got to take responsibility for yourself, and so that means your habits in every conceivable way. Okay, I'm off my soapbox for a moment.
Well, I was quite young in the 60s. Still hadn't been, well, it was 67 before I hit double digits. And, I remember back then, it didn't cost you an arm and a leg to go to the doctor. And I wish I had my mother around to ask, but I think, back then when doctors made house calls, I think it was something like $10. It was something that people could afford.
Oh, yeah. I mean, my family doc was like a friend of the family.
Yeah, doctors had time to talk with you instead of having to push, one out the door so they could get the other end to, make their insurance quota. And no, what wasn't that letter to Johnson what got your obituary in the paper?
No, that was that was actually a year or two earlier, when I was stopping some unethical research at the Mass General Hospital by going to the bishop of the Episcopal Church. I've been out there on a twig since I was before I went to medical school.
Yeah, can't you take a hint?
No. I guess, and of course, everybody knows there have been 30 holistic physicians murdered in the last couple of years for working on something for cancer that might be good. I mean, that's at the top of where we are. The establishment in every field, I don't care if it's government or education or medicine, they're all part of the control freak evil empire, the Committee of 300, all that group of evil people. Yeah,
a number of those natural physicians we're working with GCMAF, which it's probably too much time involved to get into that, but from what I understand, initially that's part of your normal gut biome, and the interaction between it and vitamin D does a wonderful job in keeping you healthy. And of course, when you go through these rounds of antibiotics, you destroy most of your immune system because that's sitting in your gut. And that's one of the things that happened to me. I had a double whammy. That was in the late 50s. That's when they were pushing formula, so I wasn't breastfed. And then I got sick, and I think the drug of choice back then was penicillin, so I had lots of injections of that when I was a baby. And then I remember even going to the pediatrician. Had so many shots that I started having dry heaves, and he said, well, it's because my gut bacteria was gone, give them some buttermilk. And that's kind of mild compared to what they're doing to kids today.
You bet. Let's face it, the system is amok, and that's being kind. So, again, you must do everything you can to take care of yourself and prepare to take care of yourself in a real emergency. I wonder how many people in Houston, for instance, were prepared for this particular disaster. And my suspicion is virtually none.
And I remember I was watching Thursday night, seeing where the track was going, and when they put in the extended forecast and I saw the hurricane do that loop and come back down and was just going to be sitting between Corpus and Houston for several days, that's when I knew this is bad. And unfortunately, by that time, even if the Houston government had been smart enough to issue an evacuation order, there's nothing you could have done about it, because you can't get 4 million people out of there in, it's probably take more than a week, but to try to do it in less than a day, you just can't do it. But at least, if you were thinking for yourself and you saw what was happening, you could have gotten out.
Exactly. So people, think, act, behave, take care of yourself. That is the critical message of the year. Now, we haven't talked about, my other interest, which has been my only financial interest personally since the 70s, has been gold and silver. What do you think will happen this time in the big crash? Will they really go where they ought to be right now?
That's what it's looking like. I've seen projections for silver going to at least $100 an ounce.
Exactly,
and I've seen some say that would actually go to even as much as $1,000 an ounce.
Of course, it won't do much good. What are you going to do with the money if you can't? But what do you think will actually happen to the dollar? Will it be worth anything?
Well, it's already not worth very much.
I know, but
we're less than 5 cents of what it was in 1913. And
thanks to Woodrow Wilson.
Yeah, and I guess Saudi is the country to really look at, but the OPEC nations that are where you have to use dollars to buy oil, watch them, and when that changes, that is pretty much the death knell, because then who needs the dollar?
Right.
And there's already, over the last few years, a number of agreements that countries are doing exchanges in their own currency for goods instead of going through the dollar. And This is John Regan with Dr. Norma Shealy. We'll be back after the break. And this is John Regan sitting in for Vincent today. We have Dr. Norma Shealy on Wednesday, and we've been talking about the economy and preparedness, and I guess going back to the preparedness side of things, I would recommend as very minimum 3 months of long-term survival food on hand. That gets you through most disasters. What we have coming up, the way I see it, is we will have a long-term disaster that is worse than the Great Depression. So I figure that's probably going to take at least 7 years. I was kind of expecting events to go quicker because of the way things are in our modern age. But then back in November, I was looking at Matthew 24, which ended up being what I spoke about the Hear the Watchman conference in March. Does anybody really know what time it is? And this took me back into the prophecies with Daniel. And I'm looking at how it's described in Matthew 24 is exactly the way we would say things today. We'd use a couple of different words here and there, but it sounds like at the end of the 7 years, that's when a nuke goes off in the temple. And once that goes, then everything else is going to start flying. And what we know today is that even with a fairly limited nuclear exchange of even just 60 to 100 warheads, and there's a whole lot more than that, ready to be thrown throughout the world, that you end up with nuclear winter. And that's where the sun and moon darken, and you're at the point where even if you did manage to have that nice survival community and you've got some experience raising your own food, it's not going to work very well if you don't have sunshine. The plants need that. And at that point is where you really need, I'm thinking, at least 3 months, because Jesus said those days would be cut short or no flesh would survive. And we've also learned from Matt Stein that with the EMP that takes down the grid, that we have 400 nuclear plants that are going to go up. So 400 Chernobyls, as he puts it. and that might not immediately kill you, but it doesn't help.
I think we might as well recycle. Oh my!
But in the meantime, food's going to be a big thing. And in the Depression, this was before the age of the supermarket. People raised some of their own food in most cases, and even those that lived in the city, typically they had somebody in their extended family that had a farm. And that's not true today. I mean, I heard stories about my mother living on the farm. I didn't really understand at the time because she was born in Kansas City, and how'd she end up at the farm? But it was because of the Depression. And we don't have that option this time, and that's what's going to make food for at least the next 7 years to me the top priority.
Well, interestingly, switching gears just slightly, before the election last year, I predicted that there was a minimum a 50-50 chance of a civil war in this country if Hillary was elected, and probably a 25 or 30% chance if Trump was elected. And now we see the media at its best, which is worse, attacking Trump every day of the year. Do you think we're likely to have a civil war?
It's possible. A lot of what's going on is being financed by Soros. And if there wasn't money in it, I'm not sure we'd see so much. This is John Wigington, Dr. Norma Shealy. We'll see you after the top of the hour break. Welcome back to USA Prepares. This is your captain, John Regan. In case you missed the first hour, Vincent had an errand to run today, so I'm sitting in for him. He'll be back tomorrow, and I'll be back with Vincent on Monday, even though it's Labor Day, to do an extended discussion on Harvey and some of the ramifications that we're really not seeing the discussion on yet. With us today, Dr. Norm Shealy, and perhaps I'll act a little bit like a caller here. You know, I'm assuming you know that I have not been a regular guest on the radio. In fact, Monday will be my first time being a guest on the radio since the Monday before Memorial Day. And what has happened, and just so you know, Becky's experiencing some of the same symptoms I am, just not quite to the same level. And we're trying to figure out what's going on. The two big things is fatigue. And I was just reading an article this week, and it sounds a lot like chronic fatigue on that part. You know, just doing minor things like going to the grocery store or taking a shower, and you can accomplish that, but then you pay for it and have to recover. The other big symptom is unexplained weight loss. And for me, that's been about 15% of body weight. That translates to about 50 pounds. And it's not that I didn't lose the weight, but when you are not trying and you're not eating right, that's definitely a red flag. One thing
John,
yes.
at some point, let me comment on what I think is going on.
Okay.
Well, basically, you have something the average physician doesn't like, because they don't know what the hell to do with it, and don't even know what to call it. You have what I call electromagnetic dysthymia. What that means is, among other things, some major stress attack. It can be at any level. It's not necessarily by any means emotional or psychological. It could have been a viral infection. It could be an accident. It could be, any number of major stresses that essentially sidetrack or wipe out the normal electrical system throughout the body. 100% of the time, people with your problem are deficient in intracellular magnesium. Oral magnesium will never replace it adequately because oral magnesium is not absorbed well. So you need magnesium lotion. That's the top of my list. Secondly, you will be deficient in the amino acid taurine. I don't know why, but at least 84 or 6% of people with this problem don't have the most critical, actually there's more of it ordinarily than any other amino acid, adequate taurine. So those are at the top of the list. The other things that can help are a cranial electrical stimulator it's totally safe. I'd use it on a child if needed. But it will help restart your serotonin mechanism because, again, people with your problem are low in serotonin and beta endorphin. I mean, those are near the top of the list. Are you taking already a minimum of 50 and preferably 100 milligrams of B-complex every day?
I probably haven't been. I've just ordered some more of that I'll have in probably next week. Using I believe it's the methyl form of all of that.
Right. Well, those are the most critical things of all. And then you've got to retrain your nervous system. In other words, when the nervous system has been overloaded electrically and otherwise, it needs to go back to kindergarten almost. And I haven't sent you an email in a while, so I may not have your email come up in my, if I try to send it to you. I'd like to send you a copy of my MP3 of autogenic training. You need to add that. I'm sorry?
That's fine.
I can't hear you.
I just said that was fine.
Okay, send me an email, and I'll send you an MP3 of autogenic training. Those are the minimum things to get you going again. Now, if you haven't had it checked, there are a minimum of 3 lab tests you need to get. One is a hemoglobin A1C. The second is a vitamin B12 level. And the third is a high sensitivity C-reactive protein. All of those need to be checked because that could lead to additional things that need to be done. Sorry to take over and make suggestions, but I can't resist.
Well, I'm not too concerned about the B12 because we've been doing that sublingually with the methyl form for years.
Good. Okay.
The one thing I have been looking at, and this also concerns the food part of the equation. Dr. Mercola recently came out with a book, Fat for Fuel, and he's got a program to get your body where it can burn fat again instead of burning the sugar that our normal diet puts us into. And in there, one of the tests he talks about is the iron level, and why I think that I need to do that as well is because I have not been able to donate blood for about 20 years now due to the time that I spent in Germany back in the 80s, because of mad cow. So I believe I need to get that checked, and then of course if it's high, then I need to find a doctor that will write me a prescription so I can go have blood taken. So
now, if you need a prescription or anything, let me know, and I'll be happy to give it to you.
that would be helpful.
Yeah, just send me a note of what you need. And also, if they have, if your insurance will cover, you need a prescription. If it won't, I'm sure that they have in Dallas and any lab test now where you get anything done without a prescription.
Right. I found a good site, and in fact, what we did is we had the CA 125 test done since those symptoms are, one of the things that can be is cancer. And for Becky, she had a result of 17.6. The reference range goes up to 38.1. So if I'm reading the test right, that suggests that she doesn't have a problem.
Exactly.
Because it's a female-oriented test, there's not a reference range for males, but my result was 9.1. So I'm assuming for whatever the CA 125 is looking for, that we're okay in that respect.
Yes, I would say so. That's good. Now we just need to look at those other few things and be sure, because, basically, chronic fatigue, chronic Lyme, all myelodysplasia, all these things are diseases that can be electromagnetic burnout.
And I'm familiar with the electrical nature of the body because of my experience with Dr. Tennant here in Dallas. So
yes.
You don't have to educate me too much in that area. I understand the importance of energy in the body. And the program that Dr. McCullough has in there, see if you have any tweaks to that. It's kind of along the lines of a ketogenic with intermittent fasting. Make sure that you keep carbs down and basically looking at net carbs so the fiber doesn't count. There's formula there to make sure that you're getting adequate protein. And it talks about there how bad excess protein is, especially animal protein. So to be enough protein in the diet, primarily from clean sources, and trying to get fish in there with the omega-3, and then filling up everything else with good fats. And
that's overall a good diet.
And to me, regardless of what the problem is, my thought was that type of eating would probably be about the best remedy. I don't have insurance. Becky does, but with the copays and the deductibles today, we can't afford to use it. So we have found a site, walkinlab.com, that offer fantastic rates for these lab tests, and you're going into LabCorp getting the exact same test that other people are paying more money for. So I throw that out as a resource for people.
Well, that's part of the medical system sucks concept that I mentioned earlier, of course. It's just part of the general chaos of the world. In my opinion, it's been going on for 104 years. It started when Wilson joined the Committee of 300 and brought the Federal Reserve in, and it's getting worse and worse and worse. But we have to start with optimal health habits, and of course that means eating real food. And 80% of the food in this country is junk. 80% is junk. That is 45% of everything eaten in this country is from McDonald's and its clones. I wouldn't drink a cup of coffee from McDonald's because they probably lace it with monosodium glutamate like everything else there.
Not to mention, have they cleaned their machine lately?
Oh, well.
John Regan,
They don't want to lose anything slime.
John Regan with Dr. Norm Shealy. We'll be back in a few minutes. This is John Regan with Dr. Norm Shealy. Wanted to ask you about one other blood test, and that's the hepatitis C. And I went to the walkinlab.com website, and you can get that antibody test for $24. So it's pretty inexpensive to do that. And while I don't think we have Hep C, Becky does have a sister that's had hepatitis C since before I met her, probably about 30 years now. She doesn't know how she got it. Her husband was Army stationed in Germany, and she kind of suspects the Army doctors over there. So I'm thinking maybe just as peace of mind throwing that in there, if nothing else. What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, it's unlikely, but at some point, if all the other tests we suggested are normal, you definitely need it. So you might want to just go ahead and get it and add it to it right now to be sure.
Okay. Some other things I've been working in. We had been drinking green tea, and I've brought in the matcha green tea, which has over 100 times the antioxidants that the brewed green tea has. So I've worked that in. I also I got to get it out of the box. I didn't do it sooner because they were replacing the windows in the apartment, and I didn't have any place to set it up. But I've got a vibrating platform, one of the two motor types.
Oh, I love them.
That will, from what I read, it's almost as good as being able to get out and go walk. So
absolutely, John. I've been using one for 21 years. It's part of my daily routine, but I think they're great.
And one of the things on my list I'm working on, that's a portable infrared sauna. It costs $500 for one that's big enough to handle somebody of my height. And so, like I said, that's on my list. The other challenge there is, since we downgraded to the one-bedroom apartment, we've got a lot of boxes to get through to just make room for setting that up. But I know how you've talked about the benefits, and this is one of those that doesn't have the electromagnetic problems of some of the cheaper models.
Right. You actually can buy an infrared blanket that we use here at the clinic. You just lie down on it and wrap yourself in it. I think it's under $200.
Okay, I'll look that up.
Yes, there's no question that heat is an excellent assistant in improving immune function. Now, finally, If you're taking adequate B complex, then if you're not taking a minimum of 2 grams of vitamin C a day, I would add that.
Okay. I'll have to. What we do is we get a vitamin C and MSM in the bulk, and we mix it.
Good.
We mix
Perfect.
it together and do a cocktail. So I have to see exactly how much that ends up putting into a serving.
Yeah, you want 2 grams of C and 1 gram of MSM.
And let's see. I'm also looking at adding broccoli sprouts into this.
Good.
Especially, we're not switched over on the diet. It's kind of hard getting that meal plan together because Becky's such a picky eater, and she can't handle spicy either. So a lot of the recipes are automatically knocked out with the spicy. And I'm almost at that point myself. I used to do some jalapenos. Now those are just way too hot for me, and even banana peppers are getting too hot for me now.
Yeah.
And
I like a little bit of a hot, but the even medium to high has never been something my tongue will tolerate.
And the other thing that's been my problem for years, and it's also starting affecting Becky now, is insomnia. You know, it'd be somewhere between 1 and 4 in the morning. You know, get up and.
Well, that's because you don't have adequate serotonin during the day to make enough melatonin at night. That's where that cranial electrical stimulator that I mentioned would help both of you tremendously.
Okay. And John Regan with Dr. Norm Shealy. We'll be back after the bottom of the hour break. This is John Regan with Dr. Norm Shealy. We did get a call. Sam from St. Louis. Welcome to USA Prepares.
Hey, guys. John, good to hear your voice. Hey, Dr. Norm, did you receive that big hug that I sent down with Lou?
I did last night, or yesterday afternoon, late, yes.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch that last part.
I said, yes, I got it yesterday afternoon. Thank you.
Okay, well, good. I'm the guy that has the wife that the Lashley coil's named after. I don't know if you've does he talk about the PEMF, the coil that is named after her? Yeah, she's doing real good. There's absolutely zero evidence of her stage 4 breast cancer. It's completely gone. And we're
knocking wood.
Yeah, exactly, and thanking the Lord that He's allowed the PEMF and the other things that we're doing to work. But she was pretty much riddled with it after she had the lumpectomy, and it came back with a vengeance. We started with the PEMF, and we're about 2.5 years later, and they can't find it anywhere in her body. And
where did she put the coil?
Well, it's called the Lashley coil for a reason. She actually put it around her right breast, and now that's the one when she's we're sitting watching a movie or doing something, she'll have that one there, and then she sleeps on the mat.
Right. Okay.
And that one has the 4 coils in it.
Yes.
So she does it. She's been doing that, like I said, for about 2.5, 3 years now. We're still on the Model A's, the very first units that Lou put out, and I'm doing my own testing. I'll go 2 weeks off of it and see how much pain I have. I have loads of back issues, a syrinx cavity in my spinal cord, an extra lumbar vertebrae and a half, and a pars defect where the spine isn't connected together. So, coupled to a massive rear ending on a highway that really messed me up. So, without that PEMF, I think I'd be in a heck of a lot more pain.
Well, thank you for that information, and blessings to both of you. There's no question in my mind. I've been working with electricity to greater or less extent since something like 1953.
Right.
And I consider PIMP the best at this moment. Although, interestingly, today we're doing the second phase of a research study on scalar energy, which may have additional benefits here and there. We'll know by tonight.
I'm looking forward to hearing Lou's report when he gets back.
Right. Yeah, isn't he the most wonderful? He's such a magician when it comes to making things.
Yeah, no kidding. But all right, I just wanted to thank you very much for everything that you've done. And John, good to hear your voice.
Thank you.
And I'll talk to you guys later.
And of course, John, PEMF, pulsed electromagnetic field therapy, can be as useful as the cranial electrical stimulator. I would loan you one for a month if you want to try it instead of going to cranial right away.
That would be nice.
Send me your email and mailing address as well.
I sent you my email, so I'll go back in and send the mailing address.
Oh, good. Okay.
And
our internet just went out here.
in fact, I just got your Relax Mate last week. I've tried it a few times.
Oh, it is excellent. That is good, especially to use at bedtime.
Yeah, what I got to do is I need to move it by the bed. I have it in the living room right now. And I keep forgetting to take it in the bedroom. By the time I would walk out, that kind of defeats... And
it's okay. If you wake up in the middle of the night, it's good enough to turn it back on.
And I wanted to ask one more condition.
Okay.
I found out about 3 weeks ago what I've been battling for probably a year and a half is a yeast infection. And it's made the foreskin real tight and all of that. And then I went out and when I found out what it was, got the generic version of the monostat and started using that. And it has helped quite a bit, but it's still sticking around. I can still feel a little itching. I was wondering anything else I can use to try to knock that out.
Nixol. I don't know if you've ever heard of that.
Right. I think I need to get some new. What I have was purchased probably about 5 years ago.
It may not be good that long, but it is one of the safest, bestest things to spray onto or rub onto the area of a fungus infection of any kind.
So I'll get some fresh of that ordered. It's kind of helped keep it in check, but it didn't really knock it out. But again, I think some of that's because of the age.
Now I've got to add one more supplement. Astaxanthin.
Okay.
Astaxanthin. 30 milligrams daily. That is, with the vitamin C, but especially that particular one, is the best thing in the world for the immune system and the skin.
Okay. I don't know if you saw the tidbit about vitamin C. There was a study, because humans are one of the few mammals that don't make their own, and they were based on the study, and I think it was mice they were using, versus their lifespan versus a human lifespan, that if humans were still making their own vitamin C, that our lifespan would be pretty much what's recorded in Genesis before the flood.
Well, yes, there's no question. My favorite for severe problems is intravenous vitamin C. I've used it since the late 70s for people with cancer, serious illnesses. I give anywhere from 25 minor viral infection to 100 grams in people with cancer. And to get the biggest boost of all to your immune system, no question that intravenous vitamin C in a Myers cocktail is the best of all.
Yeah, my understanding, second best is the liposomal vitamin C.
That's true, because you could almost everybody will tolerate well at least 5,000 milligrams of that, and some people up to 10,000 by mouth. Oh, our internet just came back on. Your email arrived.
The next break, I'll get you my address.
Good.
We're at the point we got about 15 minutes left. Did you have any more questions on what I talk about?
No, I think basically the single most important thing is for everyone to take stock of their entire lifestyle and be prepared every moment of every. This is where the Boy Scout motto pays off in the next year, especially.
And like I say, and if you go back, especially the second hour of July 21st, I talk about the signs that we're seeing. It's definitely not years away. It's weeks to months away. And it's not necessarily that we hit the windshield all at once, but at some point there's going to be that correction, which at that point, everybody's going to know that normalcy isn't there anymore.
Yes. And, of course, that's what Vince has been promoting as long as I've known him. And I actually moved to a farm in 1969 so that we could grow as much of our food as possible. And I'm a big believer in canning. And today, of course, I do a lot of vacuum pack freezing, but that won't do me any good in a real crisis. So I can in the old-fashioned pressure cooker as much as I can.
And don't forget, you need to have a way to cook as well. And I was able to finally, a few months ago, work in getting a rocket stove. While I could, MacGyver one together, it's nice to have one that was, designed and is portable. That way you can cook with a minimum amount of wood, and especially where I am in an apartment, we're not allowed to have any flammables. So we can't barbecue even with charcoal. You can't have propane. It's not very easy for trying to do preparedness considerations, but at least with the rocket stove, I've got a way. I've got my water filter with some spare filters, and I wish I wasn't in the middle of a big metroplex, but all you can do is all you can do. It's John Regan with Dr. Norm Shealy. We'll be back.
Get ready, and you take care.
Exactly. John Regan with Dr. Norm Shealy. Wanted to go totally on a separate topic here. I've been using a prepaid cellular account that's been costing us a little over $88 a month for 2 phones. And T-Mobile just came out with a new plan. I'm going to be switching to this next week, where if you're a senior and they define that as age 55 plus, you can get 2 lines, unlimited data, text, and phone for $60 a month, including taxes. So I'm going to be taking that $28 and using it to buy some food and supplements. So if
Have
you're
you ever considered track phone?
I've got we have smartphones because when I go to conferences,
But the track phone has a smartphone. They offer smartphones. Anyway, that's what I use as a track phone.
Okay. And
I can buy a year's use and, 800 minutes for $100.
Okay. Okay. Mostly in my case, where I've got to go to conferences and be able to accept credit cards and stuff, this gets me a plan that's good enough for all of that.
Yeah.
One other quick thing. If you think that Trump is going to be able to grow us out of this situation, since World War II, the administration that had the best GDP growth was LBJ, and that was 5%. The only other administration that was above 4% was Kennedy. So since 1968, the best growth that we've had in GDP has been less than 4%. So even if Trump can get 2% higher than what Obama did, that translates into less than $400 billion in new GDP growth. And even if they could tax 100% of that, that doesn't even cover the budget deficit for the year. So,
right.
If you're planning on,
how good,
you can't grow your way out.
no matter how good he is, he can't perform that kind of miracle.
I mean, even if we had the fake 7% growth that China's had in recent years, it wouldn't be enough.
No. Well, it is what it is, and as always, the most important thing is there's only one person responsible, and that is you, for your individual life, and you must take responsibility at all levels. Everything you eat, say, do, think, believe is your responsibility, and above all, take care of yourself, because basically you can't depend upon anybody else unequivocally to take care of you, especially the government.
And we've seen ample evidence of that in Southeast Texas. And I think partly what's sadder than what happened in Houston is what's happened in Beaumont, because they've watched what's happened to Houston for the last few days, and most of them didn't bother getting out of town either.
It is amazing to me how most people wait until it's too late. But, I think I've been aware of this since I was 12 years old and joined the Boy Scouts. And to me, the basic motto of be prepared is critical in every aspect of life, at every age, and for every person. And that's what USA Prepares is all about.
Exactly. And I know I've been working hard at it the last 6 years. In fact, I calculated, probably put in 25,000 hours in research, which makes it awfully darn tough to try and relate all of that information. Well, we're out of time. Dr. Shealy, it's been a pleasure to be on with you again. Look forward to being able to do so sometime in the future.
Thanks, John. Have a great one. See ya.
You too.